The visiting area of the prison was unusually quiet that morning. The usual chatter of inmates and the occasional laughter of visitors seemed to fade into the background as Steven Seagal walked in. Dressed simply in a black jacket and jeans, he carried himself with a calm, measured confidence that immediately drew attention. His steps were slow, deliberate, yet every movement carried a subtle authority, the kind only a man with decades of experience in martial arts and film could naturally exude. Seagal wasn't here as a celebrity. He wasn't here for fame or recognition. Today, he was leading a rehabilitation program for inmates, teaching martial arts techniques and, more importantly, lessons in discipline, respect, and control. But not everyone in the room saw him that way at first. A group of notorious bullies, known for intimidating other inmates, noticed him the moment he entered. Their eyes narrowed, smirks forming on their faces. They whispered among themselves, clearly underestimating the quiet man in front of them. "Who does he think he is?" one of them muttered. "Just some actor," said another, shaking his head. The tension in the air was immediate. Other prisoners noticed the bullies' stares, the way their shoulders tensed, and instinctively turned their attention toward the unfolding scene. Steven, however, seemed unfazed. He didn't glance at them with fear or irritation. Instead, he walked toward the center of the room, his gaze forward, calm and unwavering. The bullies exchanged glances, clearly uncertain. This was a man who didn't behave like anyone else they had faced before. There was no arrogance, no need to prove himself, only a steady, quiet confidence that made it clear he was not to be underestimated. The silence grew heavier. Even the guards noticed it, a subtle shift in the room's energy that signaled something was about to happen. Everyone could feel it. The bullies were about to make their move, and the entire room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the first spark of confrontation. And in that moment, one thing was certain: the bullies had no idea who they were about to face. Steven Seagal wasn't just a visitor, he was a master, a force of calm yet undeniable power. What the bullies didn't know about Steven Seagal would shock everyone present. The bullies had circled him now, their smirks turning into thinly veiled aggression. "Think you can handle this place?" one of them sneered, stepping just a little too close. Steven Seagal didn't flinch. He remained calm, standing straight with his hands relaxed at his sides. There was no fear, no reaction to their taunts, only an unwavering presence that seemed to fill the entire room. Prison guards watched cautiously from the sidelines, unsure whether to intervene. Normally, confrontations like this would erupt quickly, fists flying, chaos taking over. But Seagal's aura was different. It wasn't about intimidation or threats. It was pure, controlled authority. Even the bullies could feel it, though they refused to admit it to each other. "You think a few words can scare me?" another bully said, trying to mask his growing uncertainty with loud laughter. The other inmates had begun to notice. Whispers spread quickly, curiosity and tension mixing in the air like electricity. Everyone could sense that something extraordinary was about to happen, and they couldn't look away. Seagal finally spoke, his voice low but firm. "Respect isn't demanded, it's earned." He didn't raise his tone, didn't make threats. Every word carried weight, every pause, intentional. The bullies hesitated, clearly thrown off by the calm authority in his voice. One of them tried to step closer again, but instinctively stopped a few feet away. There was an invisible line they dared not cross. The other prisoners began to quietly record the scene on their phones, knowing this moment would be talked about for days. The tension was palpable. Seagal's calmness in the face of aggression made it clear. This wasn't a man to be underestimated, and the bullies were beginning to realize that. Even the guards exchanged glances. Normally, they would have stepped in to break up such an encounter, but something about Seagal's demeanor made them pause. He was controlling the room without raising a hand, without making a single aggressive move, and the bullies, once confident and cocky, were now visibly uncertain. At that moment, the camera angles in the room, the whispers, the shifting eyes, the subtle energy, all converged into a single fact. Everyone was waiting to see how the bullies would react. Would they back down, or would they make a move and face the consequences? If you were in Steven Seagal's shoes right now, what would you do? Confront them head on, or stay calm and wait? Comment below and tell us which country or city you're watching from. This engagement moment gives the audience a chance to participate, imagine themselves in the scene, and feel connected to the story. It also builds anticipation for what's coming next. The bullies fidgeted, uncertain how to proceed. They had expected fear, resistance, or maybe panic, but not this. The quiet authority, the unwavering gaze, and the subtle command in every word Seagal spoke had completely thrown them off balance. For the first time, they were the ones unsure of themselves, surrounded by a room full of witnesses who had already begun to root for the man they had underestimated. The stage was set. The confrontation had begun, but the outcome was far from decided. And as the tension mounted, everyone in the room, inmates, guards, and visitors alike, could feel it. The calm before the storm was about to end. The atmosphere in the prison visiting area had shifted completely. Where there had once been a quiet hum of daily routine, now there was a charged silence. Every eye in the room was fixed on Steven Seagal and the small group of bullies who had decided to confront him. The initial smirks had vanished from their faces, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. Something about the calm way Seagal held himself had already begun to undermine their confidence. One of the bullies, slightly taller than the others, stepped closer, leaning in as if to intimidate Seagal with his size. "You think you can just walk in here and tell us how to act?" he snarled. His voice carried a false bravado, but the slight tremor in his tone betrayed him. The other bullies shifted nervously, sensing the first crack in their overconfidence. Seagal remained perfectly still, his eyes locked on the man before him. There was no fear, no anger, only quiet, unwavering control. His presence alone seemed to expand, filling the room with an invisible authority that no one could ignore. The prisoners around them leaned forward, some subtly recording on their phones, others whispering to each other about the unfolding confrontation. Even the guards, who had grown accustomed to handling chaos, paused, watching the scene with cautious attention. "Respect isn't something you demand," Seagal said, his voice low but clear. "It's earned through actions, through discipline, and through self-control." Each word hit the bullies like a gentle but undeniable wave of pressure. Their postures stiffened. They had expected fear, maybe defiance, but certainly not this calm authority. And now, everyone in the room could see it. The dynamic had shifted. The taller bully clenched his fists, stepping even closer, attempting to assert dominance. "We'll see about that," he muttered, though the confidence behind his words was gone. A subtle glance from Seagal, unwavering and controlled, made him pause. His aggression, meant to intimidate, faltered under the weight of Seagal's presence. Other prisoners, who had been watching silently, began to murmur. "Who is this guy?" one whispered. "He's not scared of anything." A few more pulled out their phones, recording the moment. The room was tense, filled with anticipation. Every slight movement, every controlled breath from Seagal, was being observed. Seagal took a slow step forward, not aggressively, but with purpose. He wasn't attacking, he wasn't threatening. He was simply asserting control through presence and composure. "True strength," he said, addressing the bullies without raising his voice, "is measured by how you carry yourself when everyone expects you to react out of fear or anger." The words hit harder than any punch could have. The tall bully hesitated, uncertainty creeping into his stance. The others looked to him, waiting for him to act, but he froze. The moment Seagal's calm authority met their aggression, their carefully constructed facade of power crumbled. What they had assumed would be an easy confrontation was now a test they were unprepared for. At this point, the energy in the room was electric. Prisoners held their breath, guards exchanged glances, and even casual visitors watched, captivated by the silent showdown. Everyone could feel the intensity, the kind that makes time seem slower, where every movement is amplified, every heartbeat audible in the mind. If you were in Steven Seagal's shoes right now, would you stand your ground or walk away? Comment below and let us know what you would do. This engagement moment pulls the audience into the story, letting them imagine themselves in the room and increasing connection and retention. The bullies shuffled their feet, unsure of what to do next. They had expected fear, chaos, maybe an easy target, but not this level of control. The whispers grew louder among the onlookers. "He's not even flinching. How is he so calm?" The tension escalated further when one of the smaller bullies made a sudden, aggressive move, stepping forward as if to provoke Seagal physically. Every eye in the room followed the motion, anticipating the reaction. But Seagal didn't react impulsively. He simply adjusted his stance. subtly shifting his weight, signaling without aggression that any foolish move would be met with precise, controlled action. The smaller bully froze, the confidence in his eyes now replaced by uncertainty. The crowd began to lean forward, sensing the turning point. Guards remained on edge, ready to intervene if needed, but they also seemed to recognize that Seagal had full control of the situation without a single act of force. At that moment, the silence of the prison visiting area became deafening. Every prisoner, guard, and visitor was fully aware that the bullies had underestimated the man standing before them. The room had transformed into a theater of tension, anticipation, and awe, and Steven Seagal was the calm, commanding center of it all. By the end of this tense exchange, one thing was clear. The bullies were no longer in control. The power had shifted entirely. And everyone watching knew that the next move would determine not just the outcome of the confrontation, but the lesson the entire prison would carry forward. The air in the prison visiting area was thick with tension, but a subtle shift had begun. The initial fear and uncertainty that had gripped the bullies was now spreading into the crowd. The other inmates, who had been watching silently at first, began to murmur among themselves. "Who is this guy?" one whispered. "He's not just calm. He's commanding the room without even raising his voice." A few more prisoners leaned closer, some trying to get a better look. And then it happened. A voice from the back spoke up, almost in disbelief. "Wait, isn't that Steven Seagal?" The words cut through the charged silence like a knife. Heads turned. Whispers rippled through the room. Steven Seagal? The actor? The martial artist? Some prisoners, recognizing him from films or news reports, gasped audibly. "That's him. That's Steven Seagal." The bullies froze. The smirks that had once masked their arrogance slowly disappeared, replaced by a flicker of fear and confusion. They had assumed they were confronting just another visitor, someone ordinary they could intimidate. But now they realized they had underestimated a legend, a man whose reputation extended far beyond these prison walls. Despite the recognition spreading through the crowd, Seagal didn't raise his voice. He didn't boast. He remained composed, his calm presence unshaken. He didn't need to declare who he was. The energy in the room, the awe and attention from the crowd did it for him. Every glance, every subtle shift in posture reinforced his authority. The bullies were no longer in control. The crowd was watching, silently judging every action. One of the bullies, trying to regain some sense of dominance, stepped forward with a mocking laugh. "So what if you're famous? This is prison. Fame doesn't mean anything here." His voice trembled slightly, betraying the uncertainty beneath his bravado. Seagal's eyes met his, calm and unwavering. He didn't reply immediately. He simply stood tall, letting the weight of his presence speak louder than words. The silence in the room was profound. Prisoners and guards alike felt the shift. Even without a single punch thrown or threat made, Seagal's authority was undeniable. The whispers grew louder now, as more prisoners recognized him. "That's the guy from the movies," one said. "He can take anyone down without even touching them." The crowd began to lean in, recording videos discreetly on their phones. They were captivated, knowing they were witnessing something extraordinary, a real-life demonstration of calm control and respect commanding a room full of aggression. The bullies glanced at each other nervously. They had expected fear, resistance, maybe a fight, but not this quiet, almost intimidating composure. They realized that their usual tactics, their threats, their posturing, wouldn't work here. And the more the crowd recognized Seagal, the more powerless they felt. Seagal finally spoke, addressing not just the bullies but the entire room. "Strength is not shown by raising your fists. True strength is controlling yourself when others try to provoke you. Respect is earned through calm and integrity, not intimidation." His words were deliberate, slow, and filled with authority. Every person in the room absorbed them. Even the bullies, though reluctant to admit it, felt the truth in them. Their attempts to dominate had failed without Seagal lifting a finger. The room was silent, yet the silence was alive with tension and awe. Prisoners shifted in their seats, guards adjusted their stance, and the bullies fumbled for a response, realizing they had misjudged the man standing before them. The power had shifted entirely. In that moment, the visiting area transformed. What had started as a potential confrontation had become a lesson in respect, humility, and the subtle power of calm authority. Everyone watching, inmates, guards, and visitors alike, understood that this man was not someone to be underestimated. Seagal didn't need to prove anything with his fame. The crowd's reaction, the fear in the bully's eyes, and the respect silently growing in the room accomplished that on its own. He stood quietly, commanding the space without aggression, a master not only of martial arts but of presence, restraint, and respect. The bullies now faced a choice: back down or risk escalating against someone who had already earned the attention and awe of everyone in the room. And with every passing second, it became clearer they were no longer in control. The stage was set for what would happen next. A confrontation that would either confirm Seagal's dominance without violence or force the bullies to make a desperate, foolish move. The crowd was ready, the energy in the room palpable, and Steven Seagal remained the calm eye at the center of the storm. The room was tense, every eye locked on the scene unfolding. The bullies, who had already begun to lose confidence after realizing who they were confronting, now made a collective decision they would test Steven Seagal physically. They had underestimated him once, and their pride wouldn't allow them to back down completely. The tallest bully stepped forward first, his chest puffed out in an attempt to regain dominance. "All right," he said, his voice shaking slightly despite the forced bravado. "Let's see what you've got. You think you can just talk your way out of this?" Seagal didn't flinch. He remained calm, his gaze unwavering, his posture relaxed yet commanding. He didn't raise his fists or shift into an aggressive stance. Instead, he exuded a quiet control, an unspoken warning that every movement he made would be precise and decisive if provoked. The calm energy radiating from him was almost tangible, and the entire room felt it. The bully lunged forward, swinging his arm in a clumsy attempt to intimidate or strike Seagal. Every prisoner held their breath, expecting a violent retaliation, but Seagal's response was fluid, almost effortless. He stepped aside just enough to avoid the attack, redirecting the motion with a subtle movement that made the bully stumble forward slightly, off balance but unharmed. Gasps echoed around the room. Prisoners whispered excitedly, realizing that Seagal had neutralized the attack without aggression, without causing harm. The room's energy shifted, fear mingled with awe. Even the guards exchanged glances, impressed and slightly relieved that Seagal was handling the situation without anyone getting hurt. The other bullies hesitated, seeing what had just happened. One of them attempted to recover by charging simultaneously, thinking numbers might give him an advantage. But Seagal remained entirely composed, his movements deliberate and controlled. With minimal effort, he sidestepped the coordinated attack, using the momentum of the bullies against them, subtly guiding them off balance. "This is the difference between strength and control," Seagal said, his voice calm but carrying across the room. "Power without discipline is useless. Control without purpose is meaningless. True strength is measured by your ability to remain calm when others try to provoke you." His words resonated deeply, not just with the bullies but with every prisoner watching. The atmosphere shifted further. Admiration and respect began to replace fear and uncertainty. The bullies, who had once walked in with arrogance, were now visibly shaken. Their attacks were clumsy, disorganized, and lacked the confidence they had carried before. One of the prisoners, quietly recording the scene on his phone, whispered to his neighbor, "He doesn't even need to hit them. Look at how scared they are just because he's calm." Seagal continued to maintain control without escalation. He didn't humiliate the bullies. He simply demonstrated that their aggression was ineffective. Every step, every measured glance, reinforced the idea that confrontation alone could not win against discipline and composure. The tallest bully, now clearly rattled, tried one last desperate move, a sudden lunge aimed to intimidate through sheer recklessness. Seagal, almost effortlessly, shifted his weight, using the bully's momentum to redirect him forward, causing him to stumble but not fall. The room erupted in whispers and quiet applause. Seagal spoke again, directing his words at the bullies and the crowd alike. "You cannot force respect. You cannot earn it through fear. Only by controlling yourself, by showing discipline and integrity, do you truly gain it. You may try to dominate through strength, but real power comes from calm and control." The bullies were frozen, their confidence shattered. They had tried intimidation, aggression, and physical provocation, and each attempt had failed, without Seagal ever raising a hand in anger. The other prisoners, visitors, and even guards began to feel the lesson taking root. In that moment, it became evident. The bullies were no longer the ones in control. Seagal had taken the chaos they had attempted to create and transformed it into a demonstration of authority, calm, and respect. The confrontation was no longer about proving toughness. It had become a lesson in discipline and self-mastery, witnessed by everyone present. And as the bullies stood there, humbled and uncertain, the room remained tense yet awe-filled, waiting for what would come next. As the legend of Steven Seagal's calm authority had fully taken hold, the air in the prison visiting area had transformed completely. Where chaos and aggression had once threatened to erupt, now there was a profound silence. The bullies, who had so confidently circled Steven Seagal just moments ago, now stood frozen, their bravado stripped away by his calm authority. Each movement he made, each subtle glance, had rendered their attempts at intimidation powerless. Seagal remained perfectly composed. He did not raise his voice, did not make any sudden movements. He simply stood tall, exuding a quiet confidence that seemed to dominate the entire room. His calmness was almost palpable, and it drew the attention of every inmate, visitor, and guard present. Even those who had not previously recognized him now felt the weight of his presence, a force that demanded respect without the need for aggression or intimidation. The tallest bully, the one who had first attempted to physically challenge Seagal, looked around nervously. His friends, equally shaken, were now muttering among themselves, unsure of how to proceed. They had expected to dominate, to instill fear, to show power over someone they assumed was just another man in the prison. But they had misjudged the situation completely. The balance of power had shifted entirely. Prisoners whispered quietly, their voices barely audible, yet heavy with awe. "Did you see that?" one said. "He didn't even touch them, and they're terrified." Another murmured, "That's the difference between someone with real skill and people who think strength is just about fists." Phones discreetly recorded the scene, capturing the moment for the entire prison population to see later. Seagal finally spoke, his voice calm, deliberate, and carrying easily across the now silent room. "Respect is not something you demand. Respect is earned through discipline, integrity, and self-control," he said. "Violence and intimidation are the tools of those who lack true strength. Power is measured not by how you make others fear you, but by how you maintain control when others try to provoke you." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Even the bullies could feel the truth in them. Their attempts to dominate had failed, without Seagal ever striking a single blow. They realized that their aggression had been misguided, their pride misplaced. They were not facing just a man, they were facing someone whose mastery of presence and calm authority far exceeded their ability to intimidate. The visiting area remained silent. Every prisoner and guard was now fully engaged, absorbing the lesson being demonstrated. Seagal's calm, measured demeanor had turned a potential confrontation into a moment of teaching, witnessed by dozens of eyes, recorded on multiple phones, and etched into the memory of everyone present. One of the smaller bullies, trembling slightly, stepped back, clearly acknowledging defeat, without saying a word. The others followed suit, their earlier confidence replaced by uncertainty and respect. Even the prison guards relaxed, sensing that no intervention was needed. The situation had been resolved without force, entirely through presence and calm authority. Seagal addressed the entire room, not just the bullies. "True strength," he said, "is controlling yourself when others try to provoke you. It is showing patience when others act out of anger, and it is earning respect, not through fear, but through integrity." His voice was calm yet powerful, leaving no doubt in anyone's mind that the lesson was real and applicable. If you could stay this calm under pressure, would you? Type yes for calm or no if you think you'd lose it. The silence that followed was almost reverent. The bullies remained rooted in place, unable to regain the upper hand. The prisoners, guards, and visitors alike absorbed the power of the moment, the demonstration of discipline, control, and respect that required no violence, no shouting, no force. It was a lesson in authority, not through aggression, but through quiet mastery. Slowly, the energy in the room shifted. Awe and respect replaced tension. The bullies finally stepped back completely, acknowledging that they were outmatched not through fear of violence, but through recognition of true strength. The visiting area, once buzzing with potential conflict, had turned into a space of silence, observation, and understanding. Steven Seagal remained at the center, calm, poised, and commanding respect effortlessly. He had turned an attempted confrontation into a powerful lesson in control, presence, and integrity. A lesson that everyone in that room would remember long after the day ended. And as the prisoners, guards, and visitors slowly processed what had just happened, one thing was clear. In that moment, Steven Seagal had demonstrated that true power lies not in fists or threats, but in calm authority, unwavering composure, and the quiet ability to command respect. The silence that had fallen over the prison visiting area lingered for a moment longer, almost as if the room itself were absorbing the lesson that had just been demonstrated. The bullies, once confident and cocky, remained in place, heads lowered, unable to regain their previous bravado. They had learned something far more important than winning an argument or asserting dominance. They had learned what true strength looks like. Prisoners who had been watching in awe now whispered among themselves, sharing their thoughts quietly, but excitedly. "Did you see how calm he was?" one murmured. "Not a single punch, not a single threat, and yet he owned the whole room." Another prisoner nodded, whispering to a friend. "That's the kind of respect you earn through control, not intimidation." Phones were discreetly recording the final moments, capturing the scene for the rest of the prison population to see later. This wasn't just a confrontation anymore. It was a lesson that would be talked about for months to come. The bullies shuffled awkwardly, realizing that their earlier arrogance had been misplaced. Their attempts at aggression had failed completely, not because of brute force, but because of the calm authority and presence of one man. The largest bully finally muttered something under his breath, clearly acknowledging defeat without having to say it aloud. The other prisoners noticed and began to nod, impressed by Seagal's restraint and mastery. Even the prison guards, who had initially been tense, now relaxed. They had watched many altercations over the years, but few had been handled with such poise and control. Seagal hadn't just prevented violence. He had taught a lesson about discipline, patience, and respect that no one in the room would forget. It was a rare demonstration of leadership and authority without aggression, a power that transcended the need for fists or intimidation. Seagal spoke one final time, addressing everyone in the room. "Power isn't about dominating others. True strength is about controlling yourself, showing discipline when others act out of anger, and earning respect through integrity, not fear. That is how you command a room. That is how you command respect." His voice was calm but carried a weight that demanded attention. Every person in the room felt the truth of his words, from the bullies to the guards to the prisoners who had quietly observed from the sidelines. As Seagal finished speaking, a slow ripple of murmurs and nods spread across the visiting area. Respect replaced tension. Admiration replaced fear. The bullies, finally understanding the magnitude of what had just occurred, stepped back completely, no longer attempting to assert dominance. The lesson had been learned, silently, but powerfully. Word of the encounter traveled quickly. By the time the visiting period ended, every prisoner, guard, and visitor had shared the story with others. Phones captured clips circulated discreetly at first, and then the story spread beyond the prison walls. Soon, social media channels were buzzing with the unbelievable account. How Steven Seagal had walked into a hostile situation and turned it completely around with calm authority, restraint, and discipline. Millions of people watched, shared, and commented, inspired by the demonstration of true strength. The bullies, who had once believed fear and aggression could earn them respect, were humbled. Seagal didn't gloat, didn't mock, and didn't celebrate his victory. Instead, he continued his program, teaching martial arts and lessons about discipline and integrity, earning the admiration of everyone present. His actions spoke louder than any words could. Respect cannot be forced, but it can be earned through calm, controlled action, and consistent integrity. Prisoners and staff alike carried the story forward. It became more than a single incident. It was a teaching moment, a reminder that authority and respect are not about intimidation, but about mastery over oneself. Seagal had proven that true power lies not in physical strength alone, but in calm presence, patience, and the ability to lead by example. If you believe that calm confidence is the real power, Type respect in the comments below and subscribe for more inspiring stories like this one. By the end of the day, the visiting area had returned to its normal rhythm, but the lesson lingered. Every prisoner, guard, and visitor had witnessed the quiet authority of a man who could command respect without force. Seagal had shown that strength is measured not by aggression, but by composure, control, and integrity, a lesson that would echo in the halls of the prison for years to come. The bullies, forever changed, walked away with heads lowered, their arrogance replaced by understanding. The other prisoners, inspired by the demonstration, began to view respect and authority in a new light. And Seagal, he remained calm, unassuming, and quietly powerful, a master not only of martial arts, but of presence, restraint, and the true meaning of strength. The story of that day would be told again and again, a viral lesson in how true power is earned through discipline, not intimidation, and how one person's calm authority can turn chaos into respect.